Mangwana ni malelepo fukenjani klekwas vanave Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning, the news and current affairs show bringing you everything you need to know happening on the African continent and beyond. You are joined by Ashwin Mberi, fresh after a long night of more World Cup matches. Congratulations to Bafana Bafana with regards to their draw in their last World Cup match. We're going to be seeing what that means as they move forward. They were playing Czechia. That was the team. They managed to score a penalty of Mokoena, and some hopes are still alive in that group. It's going to come down to the last game. So we'll see how Bafana do it, albeit without all the support of Africa. These are the slides as we head into our top stories shortly. Zimbabwe court ruling deepens divisions over constitutional changes. Lawyer for Kizza Besigye charged in treason-related case in Uganda. Former Nigerian oil minister acquitted in UK bribery trial. And in a heart-warming moment, Cape Verde goalkeeper Vozinha to reunite with his mother in Miami. And we end off with South African agriculture facing mounting pressures despite recovery signs. DSTV 285, GOTV 25, oneup2.com, and Network Media Hub. That is where you can find us. Speaking of Network Media Hub, we do have some videos of the week, news videos of the week from Namibia, delivered by Network Media Hub journalists. And don't forget to always watch Africa Good Morning on NTVAFRIKA.MY.NA, keeping in mind that Africa is spelt with a K. This is Ashwin Mberi. This is Africa Good Morning. Top stories shortly.
Namibia is a land of movement, with waves that never stop reaching forward. Here, adventure is not something we search for. It is something we are born into. In every corner of this country, creativity rises, from artists, from athletes, from dreamers. And when the world comes to explore Namibia, they discover something extraordinary. Because when sport moves people, creativity moves ideas, and tourism moves the world toward us. Something powerful happens. A platform where movement meets imagination, where industries connect, where opportunity grows, where Namibia's next chapter begins. Welcome to the Creative Sport Tourism Expo. Exhibit, partner, experience. Creative sport tourism.
All right, we start off in Zimbabwe, where a court ruling dismissing a legal challenge by war veterans against proposed constitutional amendments sparked divided reactions. The country's constitutional court cleared the way for reforms that could extend presidential terms from 5 to 7 years, potentially allowing President Emmerson Mnangagwa to remain in office until 2030. Outside the court in Harare, government supporters welcomed the judgment. Sylvester Hashiti, a lawyer representing Mnangagwa, said applicants had failed to establish any misconduct on the part of the president and had no legal basis for their case. Opposition lawyers and war veterans involved in the matter said they were continuing with their efforts. Lovemo Maduku, a lawyer representing war veterans, said his clients respect the judgment of the court but are undeterred. The ruling also prompted concerns among some political analysts, including Precious Shumba, who argued that it's threatened Zimbabwe's democracy. That court ruling reflects the erosion of our judiciary by the executive, and this represents the death of our constitutional democracy, Shumba said. Keeping in mind that Zimbabwe's lower house in parliament did pass the CAB 3 bill, that is the Constitutional Amendment Bill 3, which seeks to move the elections from a popular vote to the president being chosen by members of parliament, as well as extending the presidential term to 2030. Talent Gore will be joining us next week She is in Zimbabwe, and she will certainly disseminate the facts and give us much more clarity with regards to where Zimbabwe is going politically. But we do stick with the subject of politics, albeit now in Uganda, where a former Ugandan mayor and lawyer representing detained opposition figure Kizza Besigye, who is on trial for treason, has himself been charged with a treason-related offense. Erias Lukwago appeared before a magistrate's court in Kampala, looking visibly weak, according to local media reports, days after he was arrested at his home. He denied charges of failure to report treason and was remanded in prison until next week when his case will be heard. His arrest sparked condemnation after General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, the country's military chief and son of the president, boasted about it on social media. Bobi Wine, a Ugandan opposition politician who fled the country fearing for his life after contesting the January presidential election, alleged that Lukwago had been arrested on Kainerugaba's orders while preparing to serve a court summons on the military chief. Lukwago's family sought a court order compelling security officers whom they accused of abducting him to disclose his whereabouts and release him, whether dead or alive. The family said Kainerugaba had claimed responsibility for Lukwago's seizure and boasted about mistreating him on social media. Keeping in mind, this is not the first time that the Ugandan military leader, who is also President Yoweri Museveni's son, has boasted about abducting and or allegedly torturing someone who is of a dissenting voice or represents a dissenting voice rather. But this is an interesting progression, because lawyers are there to represent and to see that justice is done. It is very tricky when a lawyer representing someone is immediately aligned with that person's values. So we will be keeping an eye on Uganda, as we have been. Now we move over to Nigeria. Former Nigerian oil minister Diezani Alison-Madueke has been cleared of taking bribes from wealthy oil executives through luxury homestays and lavish spending in the United Kingdom. The 65-year-old was found not guilty at London's Southwark Crown Court on 5 counts of accepting bribes and 1 charge of conspiracy to commit bribery. Alison-Madueke served as Nigeria's oil minister between 2010 and 2015 and was the first female president of OPEC. The verdict is a setback for the UK's National Crime Agency, which investigated the case for 13 years. Defense lawyers argued that documents proving Alison-Madueke's innocence had gone missing in Nigeria and criticized the lengthy delay before the matter reached court. Also acquitted were her older brother Doye Agama, an archbishop at a Pentecostal church in Manchester, and oil executive Olatimbo Ayinde, who had faced prosecution despite acting as an informant in a Nigerian anti-corruption investigation. Now, Alison-Madueke described herself in court as a fighter against corruption, nicknamed Madame Due Process. All right, interesting name indeed. Now, speaking of due process, during the World Cup, one of the amazing stories were that of 40-year-old Vozinha of Cape Verde, or more accurately Cabo Verde, who stopped Spain from scoring any goals during a historic 1 point in their first World Cup match. But what was heartbreaking was that, according to him, and as we now know is factual, his mother could not come to the United States because of visa issues, i.e. the aforementioned process. However, Vozinha's mother will be joining him now in Miami. He's 40 years old. Let's talk about that. Cape Verde goalkeeper Vozinha is set to be reunited with his mother ahead of his country's next World Cup match against Uruguay on Sunday. The 40-year-old revealed after his player of the match display against Spain that his mother had been unable to attend the tournament, and it was actually because of the high cost of obtaining a United States visa. We're talking about 15,000 USD. Speaking at home in São Vicente, Ana Candida Evora confirmed arrangements had now been made for her to travel to Miami. She said she was happy to have the opportunity to see her son playing in the World Cup and wanted to support him, give him strength and courage, and hug him after the game. Earlier, U.S. House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries announced that visa fees had been waived and travel arrangements made. He said he had spoken with Secretary of State Marco Rubio and thanked the U.S. State Department, the government of Cape Verde, and FIFA for helping make the reunion possible. A State Department official later confirmed that the visa team in Praia was in close contact with her. Vozinha made 7 saves against Spain, has 91 caps, plays for Chavez, and became the oldest player to appear in a nation's debut World Cup match at 40 years old and 12 days. Nothing like a mother's love. Those have been the top stories on Africa. Good morning. Shortly, we head into the news videos of the week stemming from the land of the brave, Namibia. All right, let's get into the news videos of the week stemming from Namibia. Public bearers and parliamentarians should first examine their own contribution to youth unemployment before blaming others, Student Union of Namibia Board Chairperson Bernard Kabau said in Windhoek. Speaking at a press conference by youth organizations and political formations, Kabau said leaders who repeatedly occupy positions without delivering results should, quote-unquote, go home. He endorsed Esther Simon for National Youth Council Chairperson, describing her as capable and articulate with strong youth policies. This video is by Phillipus Josef.
Yeah, before we stop, we must look at ourselves also. We are talking about youth unemployment, but we're parliament members. In parliament, year in and year out, what are they doing before they point fingers? They must interrogate themselves first. Esther, you see, for us, we are pragmatic as a progressive union. Tomorrow, she will be at evening review. She will talk there. She's very articulative. Her best policies. So if we start reading what is in that laptop, we will stay here the whole day. But we don't want to speak on her behalf. So she will speak tomorrow at evening as she goes and to win. So this is just us endorsing. And we even said, don't come. Because people will think you called me, Kavao, to support you. If Esther would sit next to me now, they could say it's Esther's agenda. I was never called by Esther. It's myself who took it upon myself to say, I think when you vet the 2 candidates, the youth are safe in this hand, then the other hand. So she will be there. Yeah, so overlapping of duties. I think let's not judge a book before opening its inside net. Let's not judge a book by its cover. So like I've said, there are people who even acting there in the board, they failed. Now they want to go and try again. This is the same thing we are complaining. They failed, they must go home.
Now, Institute for Public Policy researcher Frederico Links has called for a more targeted approach to fighting corruption, saying investigations should focus on senior decision makers. Speaking during a public engagement, Links said scrutinizing entire ministries risks becoming a distraction, with accountability which should be directed at individuals in executive and decision-making positions missing. Have a look.
The whole health ministry has been all officials are being vetted there, which I think is a distracting exercise. You know, you're looking at hundreds of people. After a while, that exercise becomes a distraction. When you should really be focusing in on specific executive roles, decision-making roles, individuals. So, you know, that needs to happen, a really deep dive investigation. We need to see full transparency. I mean, I think this is obvious now. We need to see full transparency around what's happening in terms of procurement. And it's not, we're not asking for anything radical. Actually, if you look at what the law says, procurement, and you know, it has built-in transparency mechanisms which aren't being complied with. So, you know, we need there to be greater transparency. Please, I mean, I say all of this in greater detail in the publication itself. So, and we need strengthened oversight. Once again, this is something that we keep on saying. We need oversight that has more teeth. The oversight mechanisms that were established under the 2015 framework that was brought into force in April 2017, Public Procurement Act framework, simply does not have the teeth that is necessary to deal properly with what we're seeing.
And now, Namibia Breweries and Namibia Road Safety Forum and the Namibian Police launched the Driving Under the Influence Assessment and Enforcement Program in Windhoek. The initiative aims to build a reliable, data-driven picture of alcohol's impact on driver behavior and road safety in Namibia. NAMPO Traffic Law Enforcement Head Commissioner Petra C.J. Swartz said road safety remains public safety's most persistent challenge.
Road safety remains one of the most persistent public safety challenges facing our country. Every fatal crash not only represents a statistical loss, but the loss of a parent, a child, a colleague, a friend, or a productive member of the society. As law enforcement officers, we witness firsthand and devastating consequences of reckless and impaired driving on our roads. Today, we are not merely launching yet another road safety initiative. We are launching a program that combines two critical pillars of modern policing and road safety management. And that is the pillar of enforcement, effective enforcement, and the pillar of evidence-based assessment. For many years, law enforcement agencies have understood that enforcement alone can influence driving behavior. However, enforcement coupled with reliable data allows authorities to understand the true extent of the risk, allocate resources more effectively, and develop targeted interventions that saves lives. The enforcement initiatives that we are about to start with, I understood that we are planning for 9 of them, will be conducted definitely during the month of July 2026 and then January 2027.
All right, those have been our news videos of the week stemming from Namibia. Shortly, we're going to be talking about where South Africa's agriculture is going, as we're going to be having some special comments from Wandile Sihlobo, who is an agriculture reporter in South Africa. But prior to that, we'll take a quick break as well as have a look at the economic indicator. Now, South African agriculture faces a challenging 2026 despite showing resilience through strong field crop and horticulture harvests in 2025 following recovery from drought conditions. The livestock subsector remains under severe pressure as ongoing foot and mouth disease outbreaks affecting cattle and African swine fever in pigs continue to disrupt operations. Infrastructure constraints remain a concern, including logistics, inefficiencies at ports, wind disruptions affecting table grape exports, deteriorating roads and municipal failures that increase costs as well as delays. Government reports also highlight disparities between commercial and emerging farmers, slow land reform, biosecurity gaps, tariff uncertainties, and increasing global competition. Now, we're going to be saying goodbye at this point on DSTV 285, GOTV 25, 1up2.com, and Network Media Hub as well as NTVAFRIKA.MY.NA. Africa Good Morning will return on Monday, and Mike Suchila will be delivering the Zambia report then. But as we say goodbye, there is no better source for agriculture news with regards to South Africa than Wandile Sihlobo. And this is him highlighting how the agricultural economy looks in South Africa in 2026 on his X page.
People and organizations have been warning for some time that we are heading towards a drought in the 2026-27 summer season. If you are looking into this from an agricultural perspective in Southern Africa, that's the season that starts from around October, where many people across our region start tilling the land and preparing to plant. And we've been hearing various organizations globally saying, hey, there is going to be a stronger El Nino on the horizon, and this means that various parts of the world will be experiencing a bit of drought, and in fact a tougher drought. That's what others are saying. And even here at home, the South African Weather Service has signaled towards that. But I thought the report that they released on the 2nd of June was quite clear on that, because they were saying, hey, this next summer season, it's likely going to be hot and dry. And of course, then if you are in agriculture, you are already thinking that that's a difficulty that we may be experiencing in various parts of our country. But I do think that all of it needs to be contextualized, because I've already seen some people worried quite correctly about the likely higher food prices at some point, as well as asking the questions of what will the farmers be doing going into the next season. And they do this by also adding the concerns of the higher input costs that are caused by the Middle East war, higher fertilizer prices, as well as fuel. Because if you just add fuel and fertilizer, they account for almost half of the farmers' input costs, at least those that are in grains, oilseeds, and some of the field crops. So that's quite a huge component of their input costs. And I think that if you are starting with a drought and a higher input cost, there's reason to be concerned about what decisions will the farmers be taking when it comes to the planting time.